Super Mario, a series renowned for its universal appeal and anyone-can-play mentality. Recently though, they've definitely leaned a bit too much on the easy side, so they can be fun for everyone. But looking at the series as a whole, there's some incredibly tough games in the mix, and the difficulty scale ranges tremendously. That's why today, we're looking at every main series Super Mario game and ranking them from misery to cakewalk. The original Super Mario Bros. Was the first ever 2D platformer, so being the game to introduce gamers worldwide to a new genre, you'd think it'd be pretty easy, right?
Wrong!
This game is not afraid to pick things up, and Game Over sending you all the way back to the beginning of the game on original hardware made it punishing as hell. Even if you cheat and skip to World 8, you've still gotta deal with 4 gauntlets, and that end castle also being a maze makes it 10 times more annoying and twice as hard. Trying to beat this game as the developers intended is no easy task, and I'd say it's overall a good challenge, even 40 years later. This one's the easiest placement in the entire video. I don't think it needs much explanation, but it's the most rage-inducing and unfair game in the Mario series. It bullies you, misleads you, hides the way to go from you, and does whatever it possibly can to make the experience less enjoyable. That's locked up in top-tier difficulty. Compared to the Mario 2 Japan got, this game's cake, but on its own, it's pretty in the middle. It's not mind-numbingly easy, but I wouldn't call it hard. Having 4 character options and one that lets you float makes platforming a lot easier, and the warps to skip chunks of the game don't help with that. The bosses might be a little harder than previous games, but it's not by much. I'd say it's kinda easy, especially compared to the other Mario games on NES. Being the first handheld Mario game, Super Mario Land is a very watered-down experience. Being made for the Game Boy and its lousy, barely visible screen, they had to make the player and the obstacles a lot bigger, which made the level design potential a lot more mundane. Now, the physics feel a bit off compared to other games, which can artificially make it more challenging, but being like a 30-minute playthrough makes it a tough case for anything higher than cakewalk tier. Mario 3 was such a foundational game for this series. It used the same hardware as this and gave us all of this. This game took what Mario Bros. Established structurally and created the foundation that almost every 2D platformer from that point on would copy. Level themes, world maps, power-ups, it's all here and better than ever, and it handles difficulty progression better than most games in the series. By World 5 or 6, you'll be dying quite a bit, and World 8 with all the airship levels bombarded with cannonballs and random spaces that grab you before the actual world begins is sure to cost even the most seasoned of Mario players a good handful of lives. It's not quite misery tier because it's a very fair and just straight up well-designed obstacle course, so good challenge it is.
How old?
12.
Cashback on #1 dog.
Mario World is about the same as Mario 3, I'd say. Great level design and featured power-ups that make platforming easier. The final stretch here is a lot less difficult though, but there's a couple points throughout the game where you have to find a hidden route to progress, and that makes a playthrough harder for no good reason, especially if there was no internet. It does a nice job challenging the player and doesn't overdo it with the BS, so this tier works pretty great. Like the first Mario Land, the 6 Golden Coins is a much shorter and more basic Mario platformer. The gameplay feels a lot more similar to a game like Mario World, but again, being made for a small screen forced them to really blow things up and not make anything too intricate. This is a much more traditional feeling Mario game compared to the first one, but it's still probably the easiest game in the series. Cakewalk. Mario 64 is definitely a more challenging game in my book. If you grew up with it, know all of its secrets, and appreciate its quirks, it's probably a more average difficulty. But as someone who picked it up to play just a couple years ago, it was tough. The open world sandbox style Mario game has a lot of benefits, but being so non-linear and only having vague mission titles to go off of makes clearing objectives a lot more challenging than other more guided games. Now, it is nice that you have some leeway in terms of what missions you have to beat to progress, but it's not as much as you think, and there's plenty of confusing and annoying missions you still have to do to beat the game. Platforming itself is really challenging too, and not by design. It's a pretty finicky and janky game, and Mario doesn't really control the best. And when the camera's equally terrible, it makes for a challenging combo, and it's not an intentional one. I wouldn't quite say misery, I've never found the game all that fun, but it's not overwhelmingly excruciating, so I guess it's a good challenge. Despite taking place in a really chill and relaxing vacation spot, this game is anything but a walk in the park. Challenges are broken up the same way as they are in 64. Each area has a variety of different missions and isn't an A to B linear platforming level. So what do you do instead? Basically a bunch of chores that aren't all that fun. Sometimes the objectives are very vague and hard to find, and other times they're tedious and time-consuming just for the sake of it. I prefer difficulty with well-designed platforming sections that require absolute mastery of mechanics, and this game doesn't do any of that. Flood really takes away that sort of challenge, but they do take him away for more explicit platforming moments, and it's a nice concept, but really not great in execution. This game is jank, and Flood helps to counter a lot of that, so when the game tries to flex its platforming muscles, you'll realize it skipped a couple too many workouts. And the worst part, if there's a mission you just cannot figure out, you can't beat the game. You have to beat 7 episodes in every single location, and there's no leeway like other collectathon games, and that can make it a tough playthrough. That's the main reason I'd consider it hard. Weird objectives, bullshit, and no flexibility, so it takes it from a good challenge to honestly misery. Now, I don't want to exclusively shit on this game because I'm super nostalgic for it. The world building is stellar, and there's a nuance to it that I quite enjoy, but compared to other Mario games, it's hard for all the wrong reasons, and I gotta be honest about it. 64DS is mostly the same as the original game, but now everything feels a bit more polished, the added playable characters give you more moveset options that make certain levels easier, and the added missions give you more flexibility as to what you want to complete, and force you to do a lot less nonsense. The control scheme isn't ideal, but it's not a deal breaker, and is still very usable once you adjust to it. I mean, it's still more comfortable than this frickin' thing. I'll say it's a tier easier than the original. It cleans up a lot of the annoyances, but still offers the same core level structures. Mario Bros. DS was the first 2D Mario game in over a decade, so they wanted to bring Mario into the modern era on a console that everyone and their grandma had, and to best accomplish that, they compromised on difficulty. That's okay, it's a really fun game and sets a strong foundation for future 2D Marios, and I mean, it's for a handheld, so you know, you'll be playing it on the bus, so maybe you don't want something too challenging. The final world has some harder moments, but nothing close to the final act in these other games, so realistically, it's a cakewalk. Super Mario Galaxy is one of my favorite Mario games. It was the first 3D Mario I ever played, the worlds are so immersive and fun, and the vibes were A++. It was a great starting point for the series for me, which yes, means it was pretty easy. The minimum requirements to beat the game are fairly generous, all the objectives are clear and well designed, and progression feels very natural and satisfying. The final level was pretty intimidating as a kid, but it was more than doable and the hardest part about the game. Now, there's all these extra challenge comets you have to beat to 100% the game, which I've done by the way, but those aren't insanely difficult either, and since they're only there for completionists, it wouldn't change the ranking much anyway. It's kinda easy. Worlds 1 through 7 in this game are some of the easiest Mario levels in history, but Worlds 8 and 9 really pick things up. The final battle against Bowser is one of the best in the series. It's platforming for a boss fight, literally the perfect finale for a Mario game, and the world that leads up to this moment has some pretty tough moments too. Nowhere near something like Mario Bros. 3, but it's not bad. World 9 though is a very challenging set of levels. It is just bonus content, and you have to collect all star coins in each world to unlock the levels, but they deserve some credit because they're entirely unique stages that incorporate some tough new gimmicks. 9-7 particularly, where it's all slippery ice and fire piranha plants that are melting the ground beneath you, it's one of the harder 2D Mario levels, and that's one of many in this world. I would say a good challenge, but since it's bonus content, I'll just say it has its moments.
Hi, Mom.
Galaxy 2 takes what the first one did and runs with it. Crazier environments, more challenging layouts, more collectibles, double the unique missions, it's freaking awesome. It's still not all that difficult though until you reach World S, and then things skyrocket, just like World 9 last time. Here, it's not all unique levels, but they give them a really tough twist that makes them way more stress-inducing. The final stage is probably the most iconic hard level in Mario history, the Grandmaster Galaxy. More specifically, the challenge comet called the Perfect Run, making you beat an absolute gauntlet of a level without taking a single hit. And yes, I have beat it. It took a long time, but with Galaxy being one of my favorite games, this was a great challenge and I had a lot of fun with it. Very fair and straight up hard, so because of that level alone, I'm gonna say it has its moments. Like the other handheld Mario games, 3D Land doesn't exactly try to challenge the player. It's a fun time and the 3D effects are pretty cool, but the main game is one of the easiest playthroughs in the series, and the only thing saving it from cakewalk tier is the post-game content. None of it's all that original, but they remixed previous level concepts with more enemies, spikes, and contraptions, and it certainly required a bit more attentiveness, so I guess I'll give it kinda easy tier. This game's more the same New Super Mario Bros. Stuff, but where the Wii version had a pretty tough World 9, this game gives us the Impossible Pack, which is the hardest bunch of Mario levels of all time. There's a super constraining time limit, just about every type of challenge they could possibly throw at you, and you have to beat the entire thing in one go. It puts the Grandmaster Galaxy on steroids for a 2D platforming masterclass. The rest of the game, pretty freaking standard and easy, mindless junk food Mario game, but this pack alone is lost levels hard and drags the entire package up to a misery tier. Just like the Wii version, the main game here is easy as piss, but Superstar Road is just as, if not harder than World 9, because you get the Firebar Pandemonium level and the Pendulum Castle, two really creative and challenging levels. They're no impossible pack, so it can't carry this one too high up, but it certainly has its moments. This one goes out of its way to be a more challenging Mario Bros. U from start to finish, and it 100% achieves that. With Luigi being the main character, he's got a higher jump and way more slippery movement, so that alone makes the levels harder, but add in the short time limits and the rapid-fire way they design these stages, and you've got a pretty tricky combo to work with. It was a really refreshing Mario game, especially for the time, and it was definitely a more demanding main playthrough than anything in a while, so it's a very good challenge. This game's a 2D Mario game turned 3D, so levels are very linear and geometric, which makes them easier to navigate, but the pure designs in the latter half of the game really pick up the difficulty. By World Castle and World Bowser, things get challenging for 3D Mario standards, and then there's a bunch of bonus worlds that aren't too bad, but they're capped off with Champion's Road, another Grandmaster Galaxy ripoff. Without a power-up, it might be even more challenging than that, but even with some help from items and additional players, it takes time to beat. It took me like 3 to 4 hours back in the day, and it's only supposed to take a couple of minutes. I think this is probably the same tier as Galaxy 2, a moderate main playthrough with bonus content to make you smash the Wii U gamepad over your leg. Mario Maker is kinda not fair to rank, because it's all dependent on what types of levels you seek out, and for me, I want a challenge, but I can either find the most easy, mind-numbing levels of all time, or literal Kaizo rage-bait nonsense, and anything in between those is rare. Because of that, it's kinda miserable, not gonna lie, and same thing for Mario Maker 2. This is a mobile game where Mario auto-runs forward and you tap the screen to jump. It's the most simple Mario game, and they don't do much to change that with the level designs, so it's a pretty straightforward cakewalk tier. Odyssey is such a fun and innovative 3D Mario game. It quickly became one of my favorites in the series, and I love all the unique worlds, the movement potential with Cappy, and the wide array of transformations Mario can take on. That said, it's not a hard game. Moon requirements are pretty loose, and a lot of them are either hidden in plain sight or available to buy in the shop, so they don't feel nearly as rewarding to collect as something like the Shines or Stars. The Dark Side of the Moon bonus level is pretty tough, not close to what other 3D Marios offer, but I think it's enough to keep it out of cakewalk. I like kinda easy for this one. Despite looking like a super menacing and challenging game on the outside, Bowser's Fury is probably the easiest 3D Mario game, and not even because of how short it is. There's no life system, plenty of power-ups, you can have Bowser Jr. fight enemies for you, all the platforming challenges are pretty chill, and even fighting the big baddie himself either requires you to just hide behind something, or levels out the playing field entirely and makes him more than manageable. I 100%ed it in a couple hours, and don't remember being stuck at any point in the game, so it's gotta go down in cakewalk. Mario Wonder was such a fresh-feeling 2D Mario game. I love the art style, the Wonder Flowers give levels all kinds of creative themings and gimmicks, and it's just a super fun playthrough. But yeah, it's not a very hard one. There's some trickier levels here and there, but the badge system and the abilities they give you make even the more challenging levels pretty doable for an average Mario player. It's kinda easy, but that's okay. And there you have it.
You'll never